Welcome to the Waterpeople Podcast. Today we're in conversation with Zara Noruzi, a political exile from Iran and a surfer. My Life as a Traitor is Zara Noruzi's memoir. It chronicles her arrest, imprisonment, and torture at a notorious institution for political prisoners in Iran. What her memoir doesn't mention, however, is that it was discovering the ocean, and especially surfing, at age 20 after fleeing her homeland for Australia, that ignited a healing journey of coming to terms with the trauma she'd endured. Hers is a story of youthful idealism, no apologies activism, and the power of surfing to whisk us into the present moment. So Zara starts off by telling us the story of when she was arrested in the 80s in Iran after writing articles about women's rights during or just after the war in Iran, between Iraq and Iran. And she takes us through really experiences that most of us can't even imagine.
How did you meet Zara?
I talk a little bit about this in the interview, but we met through mutual friends and we started running into each other in the surf. And I really only knew about Zara as a surf mom, right? She's a mother of two beautiful boys, and she is an absolutely frothing surfer. And I'd see her out at the pass all the time when the waves were good. And yeah, we just had sort of a casual surfing relationship. And then we started to run into each other at mutual friends' houses. And I kept hearing about this incredible story that she had. I didn't know anything about her at all. And I did a little bit of digging and found out that she has experienced things that most of us can't even imagine, and fled from a war-torn country and fled from her family, her homeland, and now resides in Australia, where you'd mistake her for any other stylish Byron Bay surf mom.
Yeah, one of the really neat things about Zara's story that I really love is how surfing sits right alongside radical human experience, and that when she's talking about all these crazy encounters with humanity and kind of how nasty we can be towards each other, that in the next sentence she mentions something about the salvation of surfing. And that just feels so refreshing and so new. And to me, Zara's story is just a very unique one in the surfing world. And maybe it isn't, but as far as I've encountered, I haven't really heard many stories like hers that just seem to really speak to the range that surfing has, that, yeah, we have this popularized aspect of surfing being a sport and a commodity, but also this range that is able to heal someone from such human-induced trauma. And that's really special.
Yeah, I felt so fortunate to get to sit at Zara's feet and just to ask questions from someone who has been through just the entire gamut of human emotion from these really traumatic experiences. And for me, her story begs the question of all the stories that have been left out of mainstream surf culture, women's stories and stories outside of the dominant white Western narrative. Hers is obviously very unique, but it's fascinating to start to delve into what surfing means for people who have no conception of it as an industry or, like you said, a commodification. Yeah, I guess it speaks to the purity of the experience and the power as well.
Totally.
Well, I hope you enjoy and sit tight for probably one of the more intense stories we'll be getting to share this season with Zara Noruzi and her journey from political exile in Iran to surfing mama of Byron Bay. Enjoy.
So I was arrested and just basically pushed into a car, taken for a month. No one knew where I was. And then after a month, I was let out on the side of the freeway. But I think it's good to give a bit of a background. So I was born in Iran and only came to Australia when I was 20 years old. And I grew up in a city where there's like 20 million people and there's no water. The closest water to us was the Caspian Sea, which was about 7 or 8 hours drive from where I lived. I was born in the middle of the war between Iran and Iraq, and life as I knew it was very different to what our kids are experiencing now. And what I knew, what I felt, that was that human life is not valuable, and it means nothing. It means nothing to be a human, let alone to be a woman in post-war and being a teenager and all the suppression and the regime that rules the country and everything that goes with it. Like the day that I was arrested, I was involved in a protest at the university, and I wrote articles about women's rights, and I watched my own sister suffer because her kids were taken away from her after divorce, and I grew up in a family that was really political and really involved, and my mum was one of those people who was educated. She wore a short mini skirt and could not give a shit about what anybody said. She would do what she wanted. She came from a not religious adult but traditional family, and she ran away from home and went and got tattoos, and she didn't vaccinate us. She was a rebel in her own right in a very traditional country and a traditional family. But then the revolution happened and the war happened, and then all of a sudden she had to cover her hair, and she was scared that people would see her tattoos on her fingers, and she would tell us, don't tell anyone this or don't do this. And so we grew up with this double life, what we were allowed to do inside the four walls of our house, but what we did outside was completely different. You can eat, drink, do whatever you want, but when you go out, you put the mask on. You act, because if you don't, then you'll be in trouble. And, I was told that my whole life, and I never thought what I did was radical enough or important enough for a government to go into the trouble to arresting like an 18-year-old. Like, I don't know. I think it happens for a lot of people. When you're young, you think you can change the world.
Yeah.
You see a problem, you go, why not? We could do it. We could do it together. If you do this and I do this and I'm going to write this article and then we're going to go and do, hold that microphone. And
you hold the hope that you can make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what drives you as a human, that there's no greater thing, I think, for anyone to hope that they can make a difference. And if that difference is a fundamental change, why not? I couldn't see why people didn't want to join. I couldn't take, it's like someone denying climate change now. So my parents were both Kurdish, and they were kind of always prosecuted. They still are in every country they've been to. And there was no other way of living for me. It was that. You don't stay quiet. You don't just take whatever is given to you, and you speak up. And my dad always says, a person is only worth as much as their conviction. And if you don't have any strong convictions, like, what are you worth? What do you stand for? Because in reality, you can never say who you are for sure, because we're obviously changing all the time and evolving. The only thing that you can say for sure is what you stand for or what you hope to achieve in life. Those are the things that you're certain about. But the rest of it changes all the time. And the principles were basically women's right. I could not understand why I should be arrested because I was skateboarding in a park. Like, why is it a crime for a woman to skateboard? Or why was it a crime to hold someone else's hand? And why is it a crime to love? These things. And why is it that a woman doesn't get the child custody? How could a mother be separated from a child? Like, who puts these rules in place? Within that period, I was interrogated every day. They were asking questions like, do you get paid from people, like, from the Americans to write these articles and do these protests? Like, how do you get the message out to to the students? Because the internet was very new then. And I got a little bit stronger, thinking, it's okay, they're going to let me go, until, the interrogation became violence, and they were, punching and kicking and starvation, and they wouldn't let you sleep, and basically a way to break you down. But I remember just lying down and, remembering my dad singing me songs and brushing my hair. And, I'm thinking, they'll find me. They'll find someone who can get me out of here. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And there was a guy in the cell above me, completely crazy. And he was telling me, you're going to die. We could hear each other. And I'm thinking, you're crazy. You must have done something really bad. But I'm not bad. I haven't done. I'm only a kid. They're going to let me go. And until the day that they came in and shaved my head. Shaved my long hair that, I don't know if anyone knows that, but as a Kurdish woman, your long hair, it's kind of your identity. All the Kurdish women have long hair. There's stories and poems and about them riding horses with their long hair, long black hair in the wind. And, you know, I remember my dad singing me song and my grandma. And the day that I saw, like, I felt my hair falling on my shoulders, I felt that something was taken from me that could never be replaced again. And I know it's just hair and it will grow again, but it was beyond that. I felt that the little girl who was so naive, that saw the good in such evil place, saw the good in the people that were there to harm her, she was gone. She was gone. And I felt that there was a new person, there was a new me that was born, and she was very scared. She was very skeptical, and she was not going to ever trust anything, because my sense of reality had collapsed, and the people that I knew and the country that I knew, I was ashamed that they were speaking my language. I was like, how could you do this to me? Like, you know, we're from the same place. How could you use that language in such a foul way? Like, I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand what I had done that was such big crime that I should be treated that way. And it took me such a long time after, when I was released out of the prison, and the silence and the moments and the trauma and the flashbacks and the wreckage that was left after I was taken. You know, you find your mum with a nervous breakdown in the hospital and everyone is in pieces, and then you finally, you know, go into a shower after a month and look at yourself in the mirror with shaved head and bruises and broken nose and everything, and you're not you anymore. You know, that level of pain and trauma affects you in such a profound way. It's not that it makes you better or worse, it's just never the same again. And until I came to Australia and until I found surfing, I don't think I even began to heal. I even began to let go of what had happened. Not let go, but find a way to live with it. Because I always say that people, you know, when people say, oh, so-and-so should get over it, you know, something happens, you get over it. But I think that's such a cruel thing to say. You don't get over things. I think we learn a way to live with it. And this is the best way that I could find to live with it. I remember coming to Australia, and I lived in Melbourne for a year, and the first day that I went for a walk, I think it was in Lygon Street, and it was 11 o'clock in the morning, and people were sitting down and drinking beer. And I thought I've woken up in this, like, another planet. You know, this is a place where people smile at you for no reason, and they actually don't want anything in return, or this is it. You know, you don't have to look over your shoulder. It's okay. No one is going to take you. Nothing is going to change. Things are going to be okay as long as you can get a job and, you know, you can manage your life. There's no immediate threats. So cool. And the very first week that I came to Australia, I met someone in Melbourne. You know, he was a surfer. They were going down to Lawn. He's like, come with us, you know, we're going surfing. I'm like, what's surfing? And they go, oh, we go, you see, you love it, you know, let's go, we're going to the ocean. So go down to Melbourne, someone puts you on a surfboard and you nosedive about 50 million times, and, you know, and then you get a wave, and that sense of flying and freedom, and just for a brief moment, like I remember the very first wave I got, for the duration of that wave, whatever it was, I don't know if it was 30 seconds or 30 minutes, I forgot about everything. Everything just fell away and it didn't exist. None of the traumas existed anymore. It didn't matter, because there was a force much greater than me and much greater than what had happened to me. And it was pushing me in a way that I wanted to go. It wasn't either of us forcing each other. It wasn't the wave pushing me or me pushing the wave. It was like we were one and we were moving, and it felt very untouched. It felt that there was no human disturbance in it. You know, it was just that one moment that I thought, it doesn't matter. None of it matters. I can have a new life. I can have a new start. I can let go of what happened, and I can, you know, this is a new beginning. And it was like I found chocolate for the first time. From there on, you know, all the weekends, you know, drive down to Lawn and, you know, sleep in your car because you can't get a hotel, and then wake up in the morning with this shitty surfboard that you bought for $100, and just being in the water just felt
The cold water too.
It didn't, like, it. Now that I go down, I just go, oh my God, that was freezing. How do we ever do that? But I just think, oh my God, it didn't even matter to me.
But was that part of it too? Like, it was such a full sensory experience. You're not thinking about what happened on land because you're trying to stay warm and you're trying to get past these waves, and it sucks you into a presence that almost nothing else probably.
I don't think anything else does, because you really have to have your wits about you when you're in the water, don't you? Like, you have to watch for other people, you have to watch for what you're doing, and there's no time to think about any of that. So you, in a way, you're meditating without even forcing it and knowing it. And that's why, you go in the water, you come back out a much happier mother and a much better person to be around. And, you could see all the surfers as soon as there hasn't been wave for a bit, everyone is so irritated. And it's like I always say, all of us, like, the water junkies trying to get a fix, go from beach to beach and try to find a wave. But being in the water, in that cold water, as you said, and being free, there's nothing else like it. And being allowed just to be, you could just be in there. Nobody's bothering you. You can just, didn't matter. You're a woman, you're a man, where are you from, what you've done, none of it matters. There's a love for surfing that the people in there are sharing, and it belongs to everyone. And you become such a tiny little thing in this universe. It makes you feel small in the best possible way. It's like the only time that you're actually happy to be small, because you feel like there's something bigger that is looking after you and nurturing you and, holding you. And there was nothing else that compared to it.
The Waterpeople Podcast is brought to you by the fine folks at Sanuk. They craft the comfiest footwear around and have been advocates for a more playful and inclusive surfing culture for more than 2 decades. Thanks, Sanuk, for your support and for encouraging water people around the globe to protect their happy places. Learn more about Sanuk's partnership with the Surfrider Foundation at sanuk.com. Thanks also to Gary McNeil Concepts for their support in making the podcast possible. Gary McNeil shapes some of the quirkiest boards around and is constantly innovating with new board materials like hemp and flax to reduce the petrochemical footprint of his boards. Learn more at garymcneilconcepts.com.au. Can you illustrate the world that you were growing up in then? Because I feel like for a lot of Americans, when they think of Iran, they think of women in black, completely covered. They think of extreme oppression. And you grew up in middle class Iran that was different than that, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I think the majority of people anywhere, in Western culture in particular, they get their general knowledge of the Middle East and Iran or any other Middle Eastern country from the mainstream media. So, and the problem is that you only get one picture, and that's a picture that suits, all the parties involved, and that's that.
Specifically the war parties.
Yeah, it's all a business, and it took me a long time to realise all of this, and until I actually came to Australia, and every time I said to someone, this is like early on in Melbourne, every time I'll go, oh, I'm from Iran, they go, oh, are you a terrorist then, or something like that. And I just had no idea, because I didn't grow up thinking we're terrorists. I thought we're people, we go to work, we pay taxes, we send our kids to school, we struggle to put food on the table, we're just people. And then to come to a whole new world where people have got this like definitive image of who you are and who your people are. And the shock of that, it took me a long time. And I couldn't understand it. I could not understand why would people say that, because, I think, I'm a Persian girl, like, I come from so much culture. I was raised that way. We have so much history, so proud to be that. And then you come here, people who only got one opinion. It's like you have been taken to the, court of public opinion and you've been sentenced to that, and that's that. You have no way out. And that's one of the reasons I actually wrote the book, because I was so shocked. And I felt like I want to introduce people to open their eyes that it's not what you think. It never is, So don't take that as an answer. Don't take what the media puts in front of you as an answer. The internet has made the world so small now and so big in a way. If you want answers, you can find them. You can educate yourself. And so the Iran that I grew up in was that. We're people struggling post-war, no one cared about America. Like, all that vilifying that we hate Americans or they hate us, it didn't exist. It
was an
didn't.
American media construction.
There was nothing in our day-to-day life that would push us that way, or there was no time for that. We had just gone through war and we were rebuilding a country and trying to set new rules in place, and they were much more worried about, the next depression. But I guess when you grow up in a country that's rich in oil, the byproduct of it is an unwanted attention from Western powers. They want to come in, they want to take it. And the best way to do that, I think, is to play with people's mind. In the media, because if our government, if Australia, announced today that they want to go to war with Iran, they have to come up with something. They have to somehow vilify them to justify, their attacks. So I think that's what happened, that constant media pushing people to believe that way. And then I learned in prison that a lot of my dad's family were all activists, and so many of them were killed and taken. But I think, in a way, they didn't tell us to protect us from what was coming and how our surname was changed because we were connected to a family who was known being activists. And I didn't know any of that. And they go, do you know so-and-so? I'm like, yeah, that's my dad's cousin, died in a car accident. No, didn't die in a car accident, died in the same prison you're sitting here right now. And I'm going, okay, things like talk about family secret, this is crazy. But it kind of made me prouder and stronger, and I thought I've stepped into someone's shoe that is way too big for me, but it's kind of in the right direction. And so proud that these were women, strong women before me, from same family, same blood. They've gone for it, they've spoken out, and they've paid the ultimate price. Not that I wanted to die, I didn't even know what it means to be in there. I couldn't understand it. I thought, surely this is a mistake. They're going to let me go tomorrow. They're going to let me go the next day. They're going to let me go.
It's not like you were in a cushy little local jail. You were in a notorious prison for murderers and worse.
This particular prison specifically is political prisoners. So even before the revolution, the previous government also used it for the same thing. So this is where you go if you're in big, big trouble. The kind of trouble that you can't use bribe to get out, because you can pretty much pay your way out of anything. But if you've been in trouble and you've ended up there, no one would touch you. And that's one of the reasons I left after I came out, because no one wanted to be associated with you. It's dangerous.
It's interesting that you talk about feeling small in the best way possible, because I can't imagine the smallness and the insignificance you would feel as a prisoner in solitary confinement, in a prison where people have no care or concern for your well-being, really. I mean, that's pretty much as inhumane treatment as you can imagine, really, right?
When I think about it now, I just think they say naivety in a way is such a blessing. Like, with what I know from life now, if I went to prison now, it would be a completely different story. But I was so naive that kept thinking, these are like good people, someone has loved them. At some point in their life, they have been loved and nurtured, and they will see that in me, they can't do this, and every day they'll come in and prove you wrong, but you just, and then the hair thing happened, and it wasn't, and then when you're in so much pain physically and emotionally, and you are broken, and they have tried everything to break you, it takes a mighty effort to not just sink in and give up and just go, that's it. And there were moments in there that you just go, I would like to check out just right about just now. I can't do this anymore. I cannot possibly be in pain, and the anxiety and when you're kept hungry, and then you go through days of that, and you start hallucinating and seeing things and hearing things, and you just become a completely different species. Like, everything that you have known about humanity and love and affection, and the way you start talking to yourself and literally going crazy. And it's being insignificant, because what are we as humans if we're not loved by someone or by something? And just, if you don't have that, then it's almost like you don't exist. And the way they do it, it's designed to make you feel that way. You know, you feel smaller and smaller and smaller every day until you don't exist anymore. And I don't know if I would have survived. I don't know if I would have even come out in a bright, you know, state of mind. I don't know if I still am, but if I had stayed there longer, if, you know, I know people who've come out with severe injuries and even being really ill, you know, with broken bones or, you know, damaged kidneys and, you know, having trouble breathing. And these are my friends, you know, these are people that I went to university with, and some of them have managed to escape the country and go to America, some of them live in UK, and, you know, a few living in Australia. But I honestly think until I found surfing, I couldn't find a moment in a day that I wasn't consumed by that. It wasn't like I was talking about it, or I was, you know, I would wake up in the morning and set my intentions to think about what happened. You know, nobody understands trauma until it happens to them, you know, and it's different for everyone. There's layers of it, and it comes in and surprises you. And then the more I grew my love for the ocean, and the more I embraced that life and embrace what it had to give. Because I think there's two type of people in water: the people who were born into the water, you know, the families that, you know, they'll be our kids, that they just don't have any other choice. This is their
They
life.
can take it for granted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And there are people, and a lot of them will stay in the water and love water, you know, until they die. But a lot of them will take it for granted. And the second are the people that will find water. You know, somehow I feel like I found my way to the water because I said yes to some guy I just met, and he could have been a serial killer. I don't know. I just love the freedom in their eyes and the excitement of what was coming. And it's like, oh, there's a swell coming, we're going down south, and you come with us. And I just wanted to be part of that. I just wanted to be part of the excitement. I didn't even know what surfing was, but then the joy in their faces, I was like, I want some of that. I want what they're having. And then the carelessness of it all, you know, stay in the water and then come out and go fishing and, you know, eat what you've caught and all of that. It was so much more than just, you know, catching that wave. It wasn't even about that. It was about what it offered you as a whole, you know, and what it made you. Because every time I say, if you step in the water the same way and then you step out the same way, something's gone missing. You're going to be a little bit happier, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more conscious about the world you're living in. There'll be something. It will offer you something if you're open to it, if you open your eyes and open your mind, and you would definitely come out a different person.
I'm just trying to imagine being in your shoes. And you talk about in your book how shoes were a big part of igniting your radicalism, wearing pink shoes.
Yeah,
at a time when
absolutely.
black was the politically accepted color of choice.
It's crazy to think about it now. And now I look at things on the internet about girls in Iran wearing all sorts of colours and doing all sorts of things, which makes me so happy to see. But I look back at when I was 10 years old and, you know, I was given a pair of pink shoes that I wasn't allowed to wear. You know, you can't wear that to school. You can't wear that to so-and-so's house. You can't wear that. So the pink shoes end up under my pillow. You know, I love them so much. I just want to wear them. So I'll wear them around the house and walk around and then we went to a funeral and I wore the pink shoes, and it was just the biggest, you know, my mum always says, you know, you were born a rebel. You just couldn't, there was never going to be a Zara that would, you know, get married and cook food and, you know, raise a family and not get involved. But I guess there's all sorts of people in this planet we need, you know. We need all sorts of us. And it's funny in Australia, like, you know, I look at what kids complain about and I just, even our own kids, I just go, are you kidding? And you know, my 10-year-old goes, I know, Mom, your life was so hard and, you know, you lived through war and this happened and that happened. I go, you're damn right you do. Like, they would never know that life. They would never know hopefully they will never know what it means to live through war. And, you know, we're watching people lose things overnight and lose loved ones. And I'm grateful that they get to grow in a world where there's peace and there's harmony. But I don't think you can ever stop educating. I think that's the biggest thing, that it keeps hope alive in me, because the more we can educate, the more we can save. And hopefully every little girl would be allowed to wear pink shoes anywhere in the world. The idea of it is just so crazy now that I look back at it. But that was the reality. That was someone's reality, and that was my reality in that world. And from there to no shoes now in
How did the experience of experiencing such radical oppression, violence, hatred, how did that not make you bitter and deeply skeptical of people? I just hear you talking about these people that you met in Melbourne, the surfers, and you went with them and you trusted them. I'm just thinking, I would have been a ball of deep, jaded skepticism about the world.
Do you know, a lot of people have asked me that question, because people go, oh my God, how did you leave? I would have died. And this is my answer. No, you wouldn't, because you will absolutely surprise and shock yourself by your own reaction. Until you're put in a certain situation, you've got an idea about who you are and what you do, but when it comes to the actual events, you obviously, it's not what you think. But I think before I left Iran, I did have a lot of therapy. This is the one thing I can say that it really helps. If getting the right help, there's people out there that have studied their whole life and they're trained to help people with trauma. And I had a lot of that. But I've thought about this a lot, because, we were talking to Berry about this, and she's like, oh, you're like my auntie and so that they were like Holocaust survivor, and you go to their house and they're laughing and they're so full of life. It just reminds me of them, but you've had so much trauma. How do you people do it? How do you... And I'm going to say it's because I was loved. I was loved very much by my family, and I think the combination of love, if there's one thing you can give to someone, your child, your neighbor, your friend, your partner, to give them honest love, to love them for who they are, and to make them feel that they're loved, because a lot of people, you love people and you don't talk about it and you don't tell them. And I think I was loved as a child, and I think that's a huge, huge thing, because when you've been loved, you learn to love. It's something that we learn. We're not born with it. It's a learned behavior. But the other thing is, when you've kind of seen the worst, it's almost like, what's beyond that? It can't be possibly worse than what happened. Everyone says life's so short, enjoy it, but really, if you've had that experience, that you really know how fragile life is, and how unpredictable it is, and how from one moment it could change so dramatically to the next, then you don't take it for granted. You will not take another moment for granted. Those guys telling me to go on the road with them, it was like, don't say no. Do I want to live in a world that is full of fear, or do I want to live in a world where there's full of hope, and the hope is to change things? There's no point of sitting in a dark corner and being fearful of life and of living life. And I saw the Amnesty International T-shirt that says, if you think you're too small to make a change, try sleeping with a mosquito. And I thought, that's so true. And I just thought, it doesn't even matter if you say yes or no, or whatever you do in life, if it's a step forward, it's good. Going on a trip, yes, step forward, growing a plant, great, step forward. Getting some chickens, I don't know, teaching your kids something fundamental and valuable, and all of that. And I think it's mainly finding happiness in little things. I've realized that the big life, human life, our body and everything, too fragile. It could break any moment. It could stop working any moment. So I'm not worried about what's to come and what's going to happen. I'm going to focus on the little moment. I'm going to focus on the small happiness.
And surfing's such a giver of that. We have so many beautiful little breathtaking minutiae that we get to experience, the dance of light on water, and the connection with someone after they catch a beautiful wave and you get to lock eyes and you just know that feeling, right? And for me, one of the deepest, most beautiful parts of being a water person is getting to remember our sense of belonging, that we belong to a place. it doesn't belong to us, but we belong within this ecology. And so what I'm wondering about you is, as someone living in exile, do you have that same feeling?
It took me a very long time to wake up in the morning. Do you know there's that brief moment that you don't remember things in the morning? Like just, it could be a couple of seconds, and then I'll wake up and go, where am I? You know, I think it took a good 10 years. 10 years waking up going, yeah, there's my husband, there's the ceiling, there's our bedroom. I'm not in Iran, I'm in a different country. And just everything would just pour back in, obviously. And, you know, to be quite honest, it only happened, that sense of, you know, I felt that I belonged to the ocean. I definitely felt that. I felt that from the day dot. And I felt that no matter which ocean, which part, I belonged to it. And it was kind to me, you know. There was so much love and there was so much happiness that came from it that I just grew more and more respect for it and for everyone that was involved in it. But sense of belonging as in to a place where you're not from, it only happened last year. It's taken me 16, 17 years, but it only happened last year because I had the accident, and that was my biggest fear. You know, we don't have family here. We've got an amazing friend. What about if something really bad happened? What about, you know, because there's a part of me that always thinks, you know, something would go wrong. You know, I grew up in war. When there was a building here one day, next day you come home from school, the building is gone. So, you know, you're never certain about what's there and what's not going to be there. So my biggest fear was always that, you know, what about if I get sick, or what about if, you know, the kids get sick?
Is your family still alive in Iran?
Yes, I've got my parents are still
and
living.
you're not allowed to ever go back, yeah.
No. Luckily, they come out and we visit each other, and they've been to Bahrain many times, and also because I came from a culture where it was all about community. You know, when they say it takes a village to raise a child, I was literally part of that village. You know, the neighbors would tell you off if you did something wrong. We slept on the rooftop. Everyone had flat roof in summer. You know, you just jump from one roof to the next. All your friends are there. Your cousin is down the road. It was just, there was never a private moment. We were all part. It was like a clan. You know, you're part of that, and you eat together. You share food. Didn't even matter. You know, you've got pot of soup. Doesn't matter. Half of it goes to the neighbors because he just lost his job, and it was just without a question. My mum's door was always open. Even now, that weird, like, you know, we've all grown up and left home, and, you know, I call her, she's like, oh, so-and-so's kids are here. She's just broken up with her boyfriend. Can I call you back? I'm just giving her some advice. I'm like, okay, go. She's like the godmother of that neighborhood still.
And
but,
that's so you, too.
So when I had the accident...
Yeah, do you want to go through that story? Do you feel like it?
Yeah. So last year in May, Cushy and I, my husband and I, went out for a dive, and just coming back, I jumped out of the boat, and big set came, pushed the boat towards me, and the boat propeller got my left leg, and cut through all the way to the bone.
Did it pull you into it? What was that sensation like?
It hit very quickly, and obviously so powerful, the boat engine, and it was so painful that it instantly went numb. But then I looked down, because you're in the water also, the blood spreads so fast. It looked like one of those horror movies, like shark attack movies. And then the pain just poured in. I just remember I was screaming, just like in horror, just from the pain and from the shock of it. And between that moment until, you know, getting to Tweed Hospital and finally they put you under anaesthetic, I could not wait for that moment where they put you in a sleep and the pain would go, because they're trying not to give you too much morphine and too much sedative, because they're about to put you under general anaesthetic. So they were giving me, like, you know, 1 meal or 2 meal every hour, and the ambulance was running late, and, you know, I'm losing blood, and then your mind start going places, and I'm saying goodbye to my husband. Don't stay sad, and get married again, and be happy. And he's crying, and, you know, everything just collapsed one more time. But this time was, I feel like, much harder because of the kids. You know, the fear of not being there for your children, I think, is the greatest fear I've ever experienced. You know, put me through prison, put me through pain, put me through whatever, but the fear of them being in harm and not being loved and nurtured, like, that was just, so profound that I feel like nothing else matters after that. You know, what is so bad about not having a house or a car, or, you know, that, as, you know, one of our friends was saying, you know, in a Western society, we focus on the 5% that we don't have, you know, and we completely ignore the 95% that we do have, because the focus is so strong on the 5%, and we've been pumped in the media that tells you have to have this, you know, the measures of happiness. But in a country like Bhutan, they focus on the 95% that they do have, and it just overtakes the 5%. It doesn't matter, you know. We are the opposite. And I feel like that was my 5%. And then you start saying goodbyes and it becomes real, and you're drifting in and out of consciousness, and you think that's it. And looking at my leg and going, even if I do leave, which it doesn't look like it, but I'll probably never surf again. This is the crazy thing. I'm in an ambulance and I'm going, I'll never surf again. But the paramedic thought that I'm saying that out of the fear of what happened to me. I'm scared to surf again. But it was purely like the sadness of thinking this leg's not going to stand. You know, I'm just thinking, what if, you know, once I knew I'm stable and I'm not bleeding to death and I'm going to see my kids again, what's the next most important thing? I'm not going to surf again. And that obviously took a long time to recover and all that. But we're talking about the sense of belonging. I come home from hospital and somebody has set up a meal train for my family. From Byron, from school, just town folks, you know. And there's messages coming to our email and, you know, to my husband's phone going, oh, you've got a, you know, fish curry coming to your house, like, you know, at 6 p.m. Can you please confirm that's a good time? By someone never heard of. Don't know that name. I spend a lot of time Googling people, you know, going, who's that? Oh, yeah, I know her, you know, from the fundraiser we did. And I know her from this and I know her from that and I know her from school. And then, you know, wake up in the morning with the crutches coming out of the bedroom. Somebody's cleaning your house, you know. Two surfing moms, Byron moms in your house cleaning, folding your sheets, folding the washing. And just, you know, in one hand, you're so mortified and go, oh, my God, you shouldn't have to do that. And in the other hand, you're so filled with love and gratitude that I just think, oh, and you can't even imagine this I'm not from here. I don't say that anymore, but, you know, I don't have family here, you know, I don't really speak this language, you know, I don't know these people or whatever. But it's none of that. Your home is what you build, where you build it, with the people that you build it. And I have never felt that I belong to a place more than I do right now. You know, I walk this street with a different light in my heart and I just think, these are my people.
How long was your recovery process from the boat accident?
So the surgeon told me that hopefully you'll be walking by next year. You know, this is what they tell you. And then, like Jason, who I did all my rehab with, is going, nah, you'll be in water, you know, within 4 or 5 months. I'm going, okay, I like this version better. Like, you know, I'm going to stick with you. I guess I'm still going through the rehab. Like, I'm still trying to, you know, build my body to be stronger. You know, Jason and a lot of people that I work with, and they go, oh, you're a, you know, medical miracle. You know, we never thought you can walk properly or do this, you know. How did you do it? And this is my answer. It is if somebody told me this 10 years ago, I would just laugh. Okay? One of my friends comes to the hospital, goes to me, can't do anything, you know, you just got to visualize all your muscles and your bones and all the nerve ending finding each other and knitting back together. And I'm going, what are you talking about? It's like, what else have you got to do? You know, you're stuck on a hospital bed and you can't move. You know, I could barely like turn. You know, my shoulder's so sore because I've been sleeping on one side for so long. And you know, my kids call me and I can't go because I actually can't physically, you know, take myself to their bedroom. And there's so much emotional and physical pain with every move you make. And you just, every moment, you know, there's that door wide open that go, give up. Just take the drugs, sink your sorrows and accept it. You'll never surf again and you'll be limping and that's that. And then there's this, small window that people are like trying to pull you into this, happy place where you could work hard and push through, and there's so much love and it kept pouring in, and you kind of feel like you owe it to the people, how all this bone broth coming in, all these soups and all this love and cuddles, and, how could I? And my kids, and then I started doing that, and I started visualizing and going, okay, here goes the muscle, and then I studied, the anatomy of a leg and a thigh muscle and, what happens. And so I started visualizing all these things and going, there's the nerve endings finding each other. And then I started dreaming about surfing, I'll go to sleep dreaming about surfing. I'll go, okay, there's a wave, and picturing myself riding the waves and paddling and, smelling the salt water and the wax on my board and, having sand on my toes and just all of that, just dreaming about it, like for hours, literally for hours, daydreaming about being in the water and surfing and which board I'm going to take out and, which beach I'm going to go to and even to the, to turning around and seeing my close friends sitting on the wave and, her smile and waving to each other and all of that, just visualizing all of that in my head. And then when we started at the gym, it was crazy. I had so much energy and I just wanted to go. I was so hungry for it. I was so determined. They give you exercise, the physio gives you exercise to go, do this 10 times a day. I'm like, okay, 1,200 times a day. I've done that today. Like crazy, just going, I can't be a victim of an accident or an incident. I cannot possibly be defined by something that has happened to you because that is just something that has happened to you. It's not who you are. Everyone says there's a reason why that happened to you. I don't think there is a reason. My brain doesn't work like that. I don't think there's a reason why anyone should experience that type of physical pain. I don't think there's a reason the accident happened to me. I think things happen randomly. It just happens, but it's what you make out of it. A therapist was telling me that, some people when they have got cancer or they've got something, it gives them a new identity because they were lacking one before that accident or before that incident, and they really take it on and they like to, not that they like it, but it's like, it's the new them and they embrace it and that's them. And she was telling me, what do you want to do with this accident? And I said, I don't want it to be that. I don't want it to be the girl that had the boat accident and look, she walks funny, or she said, I couldn't think of anything worse. I want it to go away. I want this to be the experience that made me stronger physically and emotionally. It taught me a lesson that what you put out in the world is what will come back to you. The best outcome that came out of the accident was knowing that we were loved, we were seen, people saw what we did, people saw who we are, and it came back in spades.
I want to ask you about the spiritual tradition that you were raised amongst in Iran.
The Zoroastrians.
Yeah.
So Zoroastrians are traditionally in Iran, like before Islam and before everything. So Iranians were all Zoroastrian, which is very close to Buddhism in a way. I didn't know about Buddhism until I left the country, and now that I've looked into it more and more, I realise it's very similar. It runs in 3 basic principles that says you think kindly, you speak kindly, and I'm going to say it in Farsi now.
Can you say it all in Farsi?
Pendaranik, raftaranik, goftaranik. Basically means your mannerism, what comes out of you, what you think, and what you say. Your body language, very important. What comes out of your mouth, very important. And what goes in your head. So it's all about kindness to one's self, kindness to other people. And basically they were worshippers of fire, light, and they celebrated seasons. So every season had their own celebration, and you only eat the food and the fruit of the season. So it was it was absolutely frowned upon to eat something that is not in the season and it hasn't been grown in the same area. So it was all about that basic, being sustainable in the same village. And every season they'll, gather together and exchange food. But it was a culture of respect, basically. It was all about that. And there was no God as such. It was just believing in enlightenment. A lot of meditation, a lot of, as they say, they will stare at the fire, for hours and hours and make sure that fire is always burning, because that's a fire in your heart and in your mind, and that's what makes you human. And now that I look back at it, and I just think that is such a simple principle. Like, if you stick to that, if you are kind in your mind, and what your thoughts will obviously come out as your speech and as your body language, and if you were all mindful of that, because words are quite powerful. I grew up with that. I grew up with a lot of kindness, and that was the principle of life, and the community. It was all about the community. Like, there was no way that anyone in our street or our neighborhood wouldn't be looked after by other people, and very proud people, I remember, like, people dropping off food or clothes for someone, but very discreetly, because they don't want to shame them. And I remember my mum, putting things together and go to so-and-so's house, leave it behind the door and run really, really fast. And I was like, okay, go to so-and-so's house, run, now run. Sometimes I'll just drop it. I was so scared they're going to see me that I'll just start running before dropping it. And it was all about sharing the gifts that you were given.
And community is our collective cultural heritage, isn't it? Like,
Absolutely.
What you're saying about Zoroastrianism sounds very New Agey. Like, it sounds like a lot of things that New Age principles are trying to emulate, but that's our human cultural heritage. So many nature-based, ancient or older spiritual traditions were touching on these same concepts of connect with each other, connect with yourself, connect with the world around you, and that's probably going to be good enough.
And it's like we've lost it in the modern life, and we're trying to find it again. I went and had a look at the Steiner School for the kids' high school, and they're going in. She's going in the Steiner. We encourage kids to set their intention for the day and think kindly and speak kindly. And I'm going, oh my God, we're doing this now. And people look at Steiner schools and go, oh, they're just like, the hippies and this and that. And I go, they're not actually, as you said, it sounds like a new age, but this is just us trying to find our way back to what we've always known, and the only way that actually worked, because now we've isolated ourselves as human. Everyone is in their own box, and everyone...
Our own solitary confinement, right?
We put the walls up.
Yeah. It's so painful.
I don't, like, I'm not saying open the doors wide in and let everyone in, but I just think there's something about it, that loneliness, the amount of depressions that is out, you read the depression rate in each country, and I just think, why? There's no war there, there's food, there's people, like, there's freedom. You can say whatever you want, you can wear whatever you want, you can be with whoever you want. Like, what are you depressed about? But I think I can only put it into that. It's the loneliness, and it's the poison of human mind to be lonely and not to have anybody or to share with. What is a moment if you can't share it with someone else? You hold it in your mind, and after a while you lose it, because then you start creating different versions of it until you've shared the story, until you told the story. That's what the Aboriginal culture is still strong, because they've been telling story, they've been sharing. And
our community is our context.
Yeah.
It's our mirror for reflecting us back to ourselves when we forget.
We do forget. But it's also, I think, the fear that they put in you. Like, the media puts a lot of fear in people about that, and about your, obviously you have to surround yourself with the right people. But I think fear is the biggest tool that is being used to control people, because it's so much easier, to keep an eye on you as an individual. But once you've become a group, once you're in a pack, then you're much more untouchable. I absolutely encourage people to get involved. When you see the notice board, even if you just can turn up and have your present, that's a gift that you can give to the community. Then do it. Put yourself out there, and you'll be amazed and surprised what you'll get in return.
I want to talk about an experience you had in the surf the other day. Because it seems the sort of normalized racism that we experience in Western culture, in surfing culture as a microcosm of that, seems insignificant compared to what you've experienced in your life. But the danger is that those seeds will sprout into something
that terrifies
more, right?
me. Absolutely, that terrifies me, because I've got children. This is how I looked at the water and the self culture, because I've thought the water is such a sacred place. don't stain it with that crap. Don't stain it with racism and prejudice and, sexism and all that. I think in my head, how could you, he or she's here for the same reason that you are. You share the same love. It's a love of that sports and of that culture that is dragged you into the water. And you make that choice to be racist, So somebody comes into me to the surf, comes really close to me, makes the effort to come really close to me. His board is touching my board and he looks me in the face, really strong jaw and really powerful, he's spitting in my face and going, everyone in, all the fucking wogs are now surfing here, really aggressive. Really aggressive.
And for people, as an American, I didn't know what a wog was, but it's basically anybody who's not white Australian.
Yeah. Basically, if you're... Well, it's not Asian.
Okay, right.
Not Asian.
Okay.
It's basically Mediterranean, European, Middle Eastern, it's... Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it is. I know that it doesn't include the Asians or the Aboriginals.
But everybody else.
They've got different names for
Yanks.
that.
We're different too.
Yeah.
Yanks are
you're definitely. But so this guy is telling me this, and he's got 3 kids. At least one of them was his own kid, and she is looking at him and looking at me, absolutely terrified, just terrified. And she doesn't want to look in me in the eye, and she's she just drops her gaze and looking into the water, and it felt like someone stabbed me, not because of what he said, because of the shame that she felt, that little girl felt. And I just thought, I said, I feel really sad that you've obviously come into the water angry and you're leaving angry. And it really affected me, because I thought, what kind of monster does that? What kind of monster seeds that in a child's, puts that seed in a child's brain, that you can even have that approach? What entitles you to actually paddle to someone and go and discriminate against them just based on something that they had no choice in? I didn't choose where I was born. Nobody does. You don't choose your skin color. The level of ignorance in racism, it's beyond me. I just don't understand. If you're judging someone based on something that they've chosen, maybe I could understand that. Maybe some logic in my brain go, I don't understand why someone takes drugs. Okay, that's a choice. But I don't understand why someone is Asian or Middle Eastern. Really? That is the dumbest thing you can think of. And to me, I feel like he stained the water. He stained the day with his comment and with his anger. And I don't know what he expected. Did he wanted me to paddle out of the water and just leave him? Because he obviously owns that place and I don't belong there. I don't know what he wanted. Anyway, so I paddled off and got a few waves and left. But then it terrified me. This is not the first time this has happened. And I just thought, I'm not doing anything about it. And I've never been the kind of girl that wouldn't do anything about something that bothers her and something that is wrong. Because I think as human, you've got such a strong sense of justice. You see something is wrong and you have to stand up. And they say, if you silence about racism or sexism, you're as bad as them. You can't.
You're complicit.
You're complicit, and that's a problem in Australia in particular. I think there's been so many people that have just stood there and watched it happen. There were guys and girls sitting there. Everyone heard it. He was loud enough. So I would absolutely love to raise the level of education in people, and not just in surfing, obviously, in general, but in surfing in particular, because we are all there for the same reason. We share the same love, and why go through the effort? And that whole sense of, this beach is for the locals, and that, where does that come from? Where does that come from? When did this thing started, Do we really want to go there? This place belongs to Aboriginals. If this is where we're going with this, we've all travellers and we've all found our way into these waters, and we should just respect it and just have gratitude for what we've been given and try to reserve it, not just this fight over, who's more local. I'm going to put it down to being ignorant and not being educated. And I think when I say that, as I say it, then I think there's a job there for me,
Thank you for being the impetus for so many challenging but imperative conversations in our community and around the world, because that's what you're doing here. It's amazing. Thank you, Zara.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for what you're doing and sharing all these stories. I think it's wonderful.
Special thanks always to our sound engineer, Shannon Soul Carroll. On behalf of myself, Lauren Hill, and my partner in rhyme, Dave Rastovich, thank you for making the time to listen with us. We'll be continuing the conversation on Instagram, where we're at Waterpeople Podcast. You can find show notes and links from each episode on our website, waterpeoplepodcast.com.